Welcome everyone to the regular Comox Council meeting for the evening of Wednesday, August 9th, 2023. The town of Comox respectfully acknowledges that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation people, traditional keepers of this land. Before we begin, I just want to give a big thank you to all of those that participated in the last BC Day long weekend festivities, from Philbrook Festival to our nautical days at the Comox Marina. That took a lot of different hands on deck from our fire department, our public works, management, parks, as well as we had Councillor Kerr and Councillor Haslett, who were on the Nautical Days Committee. And from a kind of attendance perspective, the 3 days at both of the festivals were a ton of fun, enjoyed by pretty much most residents, visitors, etc. So a big thank you to everyone who participated. I know all councillors were out for the weekend also, so just a big thank you. That was a really fun and festive 3 days. We had beautiful weather, and now we have the much needed rain. So thank you for each and every one, especially our two councillors who put in a ton of effort to make that go as effortlessly as it did. So thank you for that. So we'll just begin. If I can get there's no approval of late items. If I can get an adoption of the agenda. A seconder. All those in favor? That's approved. Thank you. So we have a delegation this evening from Brian Perry from Manor Park Strata Corporation. This is based on the DVP Development Variance Permit application that we'll be discussing a little bit later in the agenda, DVP 23-7. So Brian, you'll have up to 10 minutes just to give us your information. If you press the mic button, it will go red, and then those online and behind can hear you. So
it's red now.
welcome to council.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to take the 10 minutes, probably take less. Good afternoon, Mayor Minions and councillors. Thanks for having me and allowing me to speak on behalf of our application for variance. I've got a few bullet points, and I'm going to refer to them because, senior moments, I don't want to have too many of those as I go along. Recent summers have been hotter than before, we know that. And the heat dome in 2021, I was just amazed by the statistic, I didn't know it before. Killed around 600 people in BC, and that's a big deal, I think. And between June 18th and August 12th that year, by all indications, summers are going to be even warmer in the future. So it's something we have to look at and something we have to prepare for. We found that in the height of summer, some of our residents found it so hot in the units, especially in the upper floor units, that they had to leave for a little while, go elsewhere, go to hotels, visit with relatives, that sort of thing, due to the extreme heat. We have a lot of seniors in our strata, a few of us are here, and data shows that the elderly are more susceptible to the issues related to extreme heat. So we have to do something, and our Strata Council heard a lot of comments from our residents that summer. We said, boy, we got to do something. We got to do whatever we can to make this more comfortable because we don't want to lose people, and some people were thinking of moving as a result. On the other side of things, on the commercial side of things, BC Hydro, as you know, has been touting heat pumps. It's more efficient in their view, and it's important for people to look at that in the view of climate change and the need for energy conservation and that sort of thing. Federal government also supports heat pumps, as you probably know. It provides incentives for that. Compared to air conditioners, which are, and this is an obvious point, heat pumps are useful in the summer and the winter. Air conditioners, of course, only in the summer. So it's effective and efficient for people to have them. If our application is approved today by you folks, and we hope you will, what we're going to do is we're going to initiate a pilot project. We're not going to jump right into this and have 17 people buying heat pumps and installing them all at a go. We're going to do our own evaluation. We're going to have a pilot project in one unit. There's a person that's come forward and ready to do that. And we'll have an evaluation plan that we'll follow that's going to look at such things as, well, efficiency from the point of view of the homeowner. Is it really helping them? That sort of thing. Is it cutting down on their bills? Excuse me. And also, perhaps a little more importantly, in terms of the impact to other residents in the strata and nearby people, both in terms of noise, vibration, aesthetics, how it looks, that sort of thing. We've had, we spoke to a few people nearby, and we had one individual who felt that it was going to be too noisy, and that's legitimate. We want to see how that goes. We had a few other people that said, no, we're going to be okay, but you know, I think the proof will be in the pudding, and what we're going to be doing, as I said, is a pilot project with one. We'll have an evaluation plan. And unless that evaluation plan is successful, we'll have success criteria. We won't go forward with any further ones. Hopefully that'll all work. In terms, if you folks approve our application and our evaluation of our pilot project goes okay, then all of our heat pump installations are going to require an application to Strata Council and adherence to our conditions for installation and maintenance. And we've got, with our property managing company has done this sort of thing before, and they've given us a couple of templates for an application form, an indemnity form, things of that nature that will insulate us from any issues, hopefully, that would arise. So I think we've got our ducks in a row, I hope. We'll find out when I answer your questions. And that's about all I had right now. And I'll attempt to answer any questions now or when it comes time to bring it on the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. And questions from council? Councillor Hazlitt.
Thank you very much for coming out this evening. Just a couple of quick questions here for you. For the pilot projects, are any of the units that are going to be picked close to neighboring properties, or are they all contained more towards the center of the building?
Well, I think the definition of where this property is located is on an interior side yard. I think that's how the planning people have called it. Because what it does is it abuts on a neighbor's property, a homeowner's property, but it doesn't face the street, this particular property. So I think, and that is the homeowner that was concerned about this. So I think and hope that, it was just almost serendipitous. We didn't plan it that way, but I think we actually have an opportunity to do, see what the pilot shows. And, I'll be talking to them.
Thank you. And then the other question I have here is you'd mentioned that your property management firm had done this at a couple of other properties. Have they had any feedback? Are they able to provide any feedback based on some of the noise that the surrounding neighbors may have been impacted by, or do they have any of that information?
Very limited, actually, to be honest. There wasn't really, from what I heard, there were a few issues, but I don't think one of the strata said, no, we're not going to say anything. We don't want to talk about it. The other one had, nothing, no significant issues. But that's all that we had. A couple of other strata.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mayer.
Thank you so much for your presentation and also for your thoughtful approach. I was aware of the deaths that happened in the previous heat dome, and I'm aware that this is a big issue potentially, I think, for us, because cost is also a significant barrier for many folks to access heat pumps. I have two questions. My first one is, what is the current heat? Is it baseboard or is it gas? Or does it vary? It's baseboard. So there should be significant cost savings.
That's what we hear.
By what they say. Yeah. I'm really appreciating your approach of kind of measuring how it goes, in particular with the noise and vibration. I think those are potentially the biggest issues for neighbors. I would love to hear how it goes and what you learn, because I'm sure you won't be the last folks. So that was my second question, is would you be willing to share what you learn?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. You just have to remind me.
That's great. Maybe staff can help reach back and we can reconnect. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any Councillor Blacklock.
My only question is, and we could probably get into this later, but the it's my understanding that the pilot project will be using the Samsung 1200 BTU unit. If that is in fact acceptable to the strata, would you then mandate as a strata that every unit going forward put in the same unit? Or would you allow individual strata owners to select the heat pump unit of their choice?
I think we'd probably look at some, we've talked about this, and I think we'd probably look at some sort of limitation on the scope of the heat. We're not going to mandate Samsung specifically, that would be, not offering people enough choice. But, if we're looking at a particular size, if we pilot a particular size as out here, we're not going to vary very much from that in terms of, it could be another manufacturer, but similar decibel rating, similar size, because the decibels will be important, the height of the unit will be important. We don't want to vary from that.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thanks for answering the questions and the delegation. And we will be getting to this in about 30 minutes. So typical with process, we say you are welcome to stay for the duration of the meeting, or we'll take about a 1-minute break for anyone who doesn't want to stay for the rest of the meeting. But it's about in 30 minutes that we'll get there.
I'll be staying.
Yeah, perfect. That goes for everyone. So you're welcome. You're welcome, more than welcome to stay, and welcome to pop up. Thank you. So moving on to adoption of the meeting minutes, we have our regular council meeting minutes from Wednesday, July 12th. If I can get a motion for adoption. All those in favor? Perfect, thank you. So we have our consent agenda. There's items A through J. If I can get a motion to receive the full consent agenda. A seconder?
Second.
Thank you. And all those in favor? Perfect. And individual items that any council wants to pull out. And just a reminder, we need a seconder on each item. Councillor Kerr.
Item A.
Second.
Perfect. Thank you. I will just say a note that I have sent out a thank you card and explained that we are in process of doing the new MacLang platform. It is the middle of the school year, so I'm not sure when that will actually arrive at the school district, but there was a follow-up very recently to that July letter. Councillor Kerr, sorry to take
Thank you for doing that, Mayor. That's great. Yeah, so I mean, what an amazing thing to be able to read all those letters from the grade 5-6 class from Miss Radwick. Just, I guess, question for staff is, I mean, their excellent suggestion is to really include some of the history of Comox First Nations, the Midden, into the display boards down at the viewing platform. And just wanted to confirm that would be the case as staff is developing kind of what the display and viewing platform might look like.
Thank you. Yes, we're going to be working with Comox First Nations to develop the interpretive history panels regarding their history. So we're going to be working with them. I can't say for sure that, for example, we're going to highlight the items within the Midden. That's something that we're going to talk to them about and see what parts of their history they'd like to highlight and whether or not they want to draw attention to the Midden being there for fear of people maybe taking something that they shouldn't. So we'll work with Comox First Nations, but as part of this project, there will be interpretive signs about the First Nations history in the area.
Yeah, staff gave me a little briefing on that because it was really nice to hear what the students had to say. But of course, our main message was that we'd be working with the First Nation on what their messaging would look like for that area. So it was a nice message to be able to pass along and a fun project to see. I think they do that every year, but the message is a little bit different. So great to have. Other items from the consent agenda. Okay, nothing further. We'll move on to page 87 is the 2022 annual report adoption. There, seconder. Any questions on the annual report that's been provided there? All those in favor? Perfect, that passes unanimously and that will go out as approved. There's no special reports, no bylaw adoptions. New business, we have the CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund application. There's two parts here. I'll just read off the first one, that council directs staff to submit a Housing Accelerator Fund action plan that includes the initiatives as generally outlined in the staff report dated August 9th, along with the additional required documentation to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation as the town's application under the Housing Accelerator Fund program. So if we want to look at the report, move seconder. Second. Okay, questions or comments? All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you. And the second portion is that council authorize the CAO to enter into any contribution agreements or amending agreements that may be required should the town be approved for the funding under this new program.
Second.
Perfect. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That went faster than I expected and passed unanimously. Thank you so much to CAO Wall and Director Commends for their work on putting this together under the tight deadline that was there and the opportunity to get some of this funding that will be a real benefit to the community. Next, we have that came faster to 2250 Manor Place. So there's a development variance permit application, and it reads that development variance permit DVP 23-7 for 2250 Manor Place be issued subject to the DVP permit conditions listed in Schedule 1 of the August 9th agenda, planning report on DVP 23-7.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Blacklock.
And just a question with respect to what is considered front, back, and side yards. With respect to the complex has 3 buildings, and of course, anytime a building has frontage on 2 roads, there's always the question of what is front and what is back, as well as some of the buildings are not, if you look at, I believe it's page 139 at the bottom of the agenda package, the site plan shows the 3 buildings of the complex. It's my understanding in reading the report that we're dealing with building A, the front yard setback is considered Manor Place, correct? Mm-hmm. So for the back building, building B, would the front yard be Comox Avenue?
Over to staff.
Yeah,
No, the parcel only has one front yard.
Okay.
So that's Manor Place. Comox Avenue's the rear, and then the east and west lot lines are interior sides.
so then, okay, so that's, I just wanted to make sure that the front yard is indeed for the whole strata. Thank you.
One front on that one. Councillor Mayer.
Thank you. I'm just curious about how to make this easier for people, really acknowledging that this is an emergency preparedness piece, and connecting it again to the heat dome and the loss of life that we experienced in BC related to it. And it seems like sound is the primary concern for people. So perhaps a question for staff, if there is a way to incorporate some kind of guidance in the bylaws that would help manage for sound so that there doesn't have to be a long additional process for people to get approvals for something like this.
Over to CAO Wall.
Yeah, thank you. There is amendments that we can make to our bylaws, and I think as we're going through our OCP process and starting to take a look at all of the different changes that need to go into our bylaws, that would be a good time for us to be taking a look at this. And I believe that you can even get into adding simply, you could simply go to allow any heat pump that produces below a certain decibel level within the property, which would allow for a lot more flexibility. And I know when we're going through the OCP process, we're going to be looking at a number of environmentally related regulation changes, and that would probably be a good opportunity for us to do that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the reminding on timing. That would be best. Other questions from council? Councillor Blacklock, just mic on. I don't know. Perfect. Okay, and there is I believe, motion on the floor. So all those in favor? Perfect, and that passes unanimously, and there's for the pilot project. So thank you for your attendance this evening on that. Yeah. we can do the same applies. You're welcome to stay, and you're welcome to. There's no pressure. We'll keep going, but page 149, we have the CVRD conveyance project nighttime works that council delegate authority to administration to review and approve variances to bylaw number 1652 for construction at night for the CVRD sewer conveyance project if it aligns with the traffic management strategy. which was presented to Comox Sewage Commission on February 14th, attached to the report. Seconder. Okay, questions and comments on the report that was provided? All those in favor? Perfect, that passes unanimously. Moving on to notices of motion, we have a notice of motion from July 12th, 2023 to look at speed limits in downtown core. And there's the 3 points there: that administration be directed to prepare a report for council that recognizes the importance of safety to Comox residents and visitors, that evaluates a reduction in speed limit in downtown core to 30 kilometers, and provides recommendation on piloting a speed limit reduction in one residential neighborhood. So that's the motion on the floor. And if we can get a mover and seconder, we will open discussion. Seconder. Perfect. And for discussion, I'll likely go to Councillor Kerr.
Sure, why don't I start this one off? Thank you, and thanks, just want to say thank you to, most of the members of council that I had a chance to chat about this with and kind of debate different options about. This is really, we get a lot of letters, right? Speed's too high past my place, people speed through the downtown, we get people that I know approach us. So this is an attempt to address some of those residents' concerns. Really, there's three kind of components or reasons behind this motion. First is obviously safety, right? If we can decrease the number of accidents, to cars, bikers, walkers, and even, reduce the near misses, that would be great. And we know reduced speed does do that. We live in a quiet seaside community and the population is growing. We're seeing more traffic. So maybe a way to kind of defend against that extra busyness is to just keep things going slow. The second point really is just to promote more active transportation. And we're doing a lot of great things in the town with greenways and more bike lanes. But we know there's also a lot of scooters and walkers on the roads and on the pathways. And we want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and safe. And again, by reducing traffic, we kind of encourage that active transportation piece. And the last piece, and this is definitely not the least, is really to help support our downtown businesses. We know people that drive to downtown locations, the research has shown you tend to kind of drive, get as close as you can to where you want to go in, pop into that one store, get back in your car and go. Whereas people that walk and bike often meander in and out of shops and spend more time and spend more money downtown. So again, if we can make people feel more comfortable to walk and bike downtown because it's the traffic is at a reduced speed, that would be a great thing to do as well. So those are kind of the reasons behind, and I appreciate in the various iterations of this motion how it's evolved over time, and it is where it is now. But I'm also very open to any suggestions and ideas or amendments that others in council might have to make it even better. Thank you.
Thanks for that preface. Questions or comments from council on looking at our downtown speed limits? Councillor Grant?
I will. So, over my years on council, this comes up every time a new council gets in. This is one of those motions that reoccurs itself. I'm really not sure in our downtown where you can actually go faster than 30 Ks. And in those spots that you could, there's already park signs and playground signs that are limited to 30 already. So I'm not really sure if we're not solving a problem we don't have here. And so I would be against this motion just because I don't think that it's something that's necessary. And then we get into enforcement and there's all sorts of other issues that come with it. I think Courtney just did this and found out that it actually sped up the traffic. It didn't speed it down or slow it down. So I'm just not seeing why we would put staff through the effort and the work to do this for something that I think we already know the answer to.
Councillor Mayer?
I'm really appreciative of this motion. I think supporting, for all the reasons that were listed. One of the questions I have changing speed limits without changing road design, I think, doesn't get us the behavior change. And I think that's the piece where I'm most interested. And where it'll take, I think, some extra steps and a lot of guidance and staff expertise to make some recommendations for how we can go beyond just having a sign change and actually get the speed change. And I have seen folks going pretty fast through town, so I would definitely be in favor of encouraging a slower speed.
Councillor Swift?
Thank you. I am not going to support this motion at this time. Our downtown is defined from Ellis Street to Stewart Street, and you can only go one block before there's a stop sign, so it's really hard to get up to 30 kilometers or beyond. Where the issues are people with their souped up cars coming along the straight stretches of Balmoral and up from the marina and in those parts of the community. But I think just putting up a sign isn't enough. And it does, if you put up the sign, but you don't have the enforcement that accompanies that, then it's really frustrating for everybody. So I don't think we're in a position to really have the police sitting there to enforce this kind of a speed limit. And additionally, we're having the sewer conveyance project go through the town next year. So traffic is going to be extremely disrupted all along Beaufort and Balmoral. So I don't think the timing of this is appropriate for that reason either. And if you look at the town as a whole, we do have playgrounds, school zones, the area out in Point Holmes that has the 30 kilometer speed limit, the speed readers along Knoll by the community center. So there are places in town where 30 kilometers is the expected speed limit. And so I don't think that this time we're ready to expand it beyond that.
I think we all agree that when we get excessive speed complaints, it's something we're all concerned about. If we could get people to change their behaviors, that would be an easy motion to make, but it's the research out there isn't showing that just the speed signs is enough. So is there any further information that's coming out of the city of Courtenay that would be helpful in us making any determinations, or is it pretty much the initial reports on the Crown Isle pilot are pretty definitive? I think they're going 2 kilometers slower. So they worked, but not extreme. But we all agree that speed is an issue outside of that.
I'm not aware of what the final report is going to be. I do know it's coming out soon. I would suspect it's going to continue to show what they found originally, which is about a 1.5 kilometer per hour reduction in speed. However, that's just a sort of educated guess. I don't know what the final results are.
Okay, thank you. And do we know just offhand if we're getting more patrolling by the RCMP in our downtown, or it seems to be along Knight and Guthrie in the past years when we make that like a top 3 priority? Is that getting some traction with the number of officers we're getting there?
Yeah, when council raised this, I think a couple of years ago, it started to become a larger focus that we were working with the RCMP, and they did show us the data saying that they have been in the areas more, that they are ticketing in those areas more. How much of an appreciative decrease in speed that's resulting in, I'm not sure, but they have made at least somewhat of an effort to do so. Whether that's continuing right now, we'll have to wait till the next RCMP report and talk to them.
So something we can continue to kind of flag on that front. Other questions or comments before we discuss further? Councillor Mayer.
Not to put staff on the spot, but I'm just wondering if staff could talk a little bit about some of the kind of maybe design interventions that can be made retroactively. I think most of our roads were actually designed for faster speeds, which is why when we just change the signs, the behavior doesn't change. So I'm wondering if we could just get some kind of idea about what kinds of interventions might change the behavior and what the associated costs could be if we looked at certain areas.
Over to staff.
Yeah, thanks. I guess it depends on what area we're talking about. So in the downtown, we do have a lot of stop and go already that reduces the speed at which people can travel. When you're talking about our arterials, they are designed allowing people to go quickly. I think you're going to have a really difficult time to try and slow people down on your main roads, whether that be Anderton, Knoll, Guthrie, because you have those a little bit wider for a reason. And then when you get into the residential neighborhoods, the speed complaints are generally coming from a few areas that are seeing spillover traffic because we simply have more people and more vehicles on the road. Like Bona Vista, we hear those complaints quite a bit. When we put the speed tubes out in the areas where people are having the complaints, we're not seeing a significantly different percentage of speeders. It's just that there's more people on the road, so the number of speeders are increased and the number of people who are making you feel uncomfortable are increased. Having said that, there are a number of things that can be done and added post to already developed areas. You know, the delineators that you can bolt into the road to help narrow them in different areas. Sidewalks can come in, you can formalize parking, and some of those things, you know, the formalizing of parking we are doing in the new once the conveyance project goes through on some of the areas too. So those are things that we can do, but it does get it can get a little bit tricky when you're getting into intersection design, because then you're starting to say, okay, you're having to look at where you're going to put the delineators. You have to check the turning radius for the types of vehicles that are going to be coming through. So it can get a little expensive to go back and retrofit your to retrofit your streets with those different changes. I think, and I know I always give this advice when we get to this point, is the best thing to do if we feel that our traffic policy is not working is to pull out that policy and see at a structural level where we think it's failing and where we think it's not living up to where we want it to be. And what tends to happen when we go back to that policy area is that we see we are meeting those 85th percentile speeds that we're targeting. And then the question is, do we want to change those targets?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerr.
I see Councillor Hazlitt.
My apologies, Councillor Hazlitt, and then Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. At this time, I'm going to be opposed to this motion. One of my big questions that was answered here tonight was with respects to Crown Isle and how the lowering of the speed limits affected that area, and 1 to 2 kilometers lower isn't too much, as well as with what Councillor Swift had to say with respect to the sewer conveyance project. There's going to be a really, really large disruption happening to our downtown core here coming up really quickly. And I don't think the time is now to make that change. In addition to, there's a lot of times in the day in our downtown where it's almost impossible to get over 10 kilometers an hour. So for those reasons at the moment, that would be why I would be opposed to this motion.
Councillor Kerr and then Councillor Blacklock.
Councillor Blacklock hasn't spoken yet. I'm happy to go after him.
Councillor Blacklock.
This community, it's colloquially known as slow mocks, right? I've heard the term. The driving speeds in Comox are generally quite low, and people drive very safely, and they stop at the stop signs. That has been my personal experience of 40 whatever years in the town. What I worry about is if you were going to delineate the downtown into a 30 kilometer an hour zone, you might get an increase in these shortcutters, right? And I see them when I go to work along Bona Vista, or sometimes when you're walking on Beaufort. You see people who are circumventing the downtown 2 busiest blocks by cutting up and around that way. So I see a day where we could follow, perhaps, I look to a community like Oak Bay, which, through a very different geographical area. However, similar in that the streets are laid out grid pattern, there's lots of stop signs with a few traffic roundabouts. They implemented at some point in the last few years a 40 kilometer across the board everywhere. And I think as the town continues to grow and as we continue to add units, additional dwelling units to the town, and additional density in the downtown core that we should look at perhaps doing a community-wide 40K. But at this point, I don't think I would support a 30K study for downtown.
Thanks for those comments. Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, thanks for everyone's thoughts on this. I think, again, the point of this motion isn't to set something in stone. It's simply to ask for more information, to have staff do a bit of a deep dive into this and figure out if there's some better options. The Courtney example, again, we don't have the result of that pilot. The timing of this motion was to kind of embark on that staff report as the Courtney final report comes out, and then hopefully our staff recommendation would come afterwards. There was a reduction in speed. It was small initially. After more time, you wonder if that speed reduction will increase. It was a very short amount of time that first study was done. Also, we don't have the traffic accident data yet. So what if there was a X percentage decrease in motor vehicle accidents, or pedestrian that were hit, or bikes that were hit? So again, we don't have a complete set of information from the Courtney pilot, so that's why the timing of this. Speaking of timing, I think the sewer conveyance timing is actually the perfect time to do this study, because we know with the sewer conveyance, people will be bypassing. They'll be going on all the residential streets to get around through the downtown. So having a suggestion maybe of a reduction to 40, the entire town, might be perfect. This might be the perfect timing to do that, with the sewer conveyance coming through shortly. And I'm certainly not a traffic expert. I know Director Ashfield and her team probably have a lot of ideas and would have lots of suggestions and recommendations for us to think about with a growing population, the sewer conveyance coming through. And maybe it is keep it 40 everywhere, or change it to 40 everywhere, including downtown and residential neighborhoods, but keep the arterials at 50. Again, lots of different ideas, hence asking for a report, not a final solution tonight. So I would, for those of you who are considering, voting against this, I would just ask you to maybe reconsider and think about, could we ask staff to look into this, provide recommendations, give us more info, and then we can make a final decision at a later time.
Thanks for those more ending comments on that. Just a quick question to staff. If council was to look at something where it was more of a blanket speed limit, possibly keeping the arterial or busier through roads at 50, is there any staff kind of thought or recommendation on when that would be the best timing, whether it would be before the sewage conveyance project or after? Is there any best time to be providing such a report?
I'm just trying to think about that. It's an interesting question. Sorry.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
I think maybe coming out of the project, because you're going to want to be able to get people's attention that something has changed, and we're going to be wanting to get people's attention as to what's going to be happening with the project when the project is first coming. And so as it's leaving, then you can start to have the messaging that something has changed. Probably a little bit easier that way. I'm thinking just on the timing of when you need to have people's attention and what information you want them to be processing. Maybe as you come out of the project to have those changes might work best, but I don't know if it makes that much of a difference either way.
Okay, thank you for that on the spot topic. So there is a motion on the floor. Is there any more comments, questions, changes to the motion? Or otherwise we will vote on as it is there, as it reads. Okay, all those in favor of the motion and opposed? And that motion is defeated. Thanks for the comments on that. Okay, so moving on to correspondence, there is 4 items there. There was an updated agenda sent out, and there are 4 letters, so we'll go one by one. The first one is from Artur, if I'm saying that correctly, from Comox Valley Record. If I can move receipt.
We'll move receipt of that.
And a seconder. Okay, perfect. And just to add some commentary, I did speak with the Village of Cumberland and the City of Courtenay on what their approach was on that letter. The City of Courtenay moved it until September because their mayor was away and they decided to wait for his return. So they have no decision on that. It's been moved by a month. And the Village of Cumberland was responding that they do not deal with social media advertising and so that it didn't affect them. My understanding from talking to Artur was there was the piece about making a stance on advertising on that platform, but also they were looking for some sort of advocacy or support from the region. So we can either wait until we've had a chance to find out what Courtenay is planning on this, but it's basically on that bill C-18 that's blocking news from being shared on social media platforms. So definitely it's out of our municipal scope, but we can choose to do advocacy on it or not. So we'll just move for receipt, but is there any questions or comments on the letter from the record there? We have Councillor Blacklock and then Councillor Haslett.
I would just be curious to know how much the town of Comox spent in the last fiscal year on social media advertising.
Over to staff.
Yeah, we can pull those numbers for you. I can say that it is an integral part of our media strategy, especially when it comes to recreation. To be honest, the dollar per reach that you get through social media advertising, especially the targeted Facebook ads, is quite valuable, especially to our recreation department. But we've even started doing targeted advertising for job postings. And when you look at the cost to put a job posting on some of the more professional boards versus the social media, it's significantly cheaper. Now we do have to do both, and we can use social media as an add-on. So I think my recommendation to council would be, if you are considering following this, which is certainly your prerogative, you may want to seek a staff report to find out what we're spending, what we're advertising, and the potential impacts to no longer using it.
Yeah, and I think there's other factors, like they were saying the province has sent advocacy letters, but of course we don't have access to kind of all the different aspects of advocacy that's happening because it's a federal bill. Councillor Haslett.
My question was along the lines of Councillor Blacklock's question on how much the town spends on social media advertising. So I believe that's been answered.
So just a quick question, Councillor Grant.
Yeah, thank you. I think that what Artur is asking us to do is inject ourselves into a war between the Canadian government and Meta, and I don't think it's any place for us to even come close to getting into. So I would suggest that we receive this and be done with it.
Okay, thanks for those comments. Just a quick question to staff. Is the staff report that may or may not be provided, is that something that would be very time consuming to do?
I don't think so. We can probably pull the records of what we've spent and just talk about where our advertising is going. We might not be able to give you the best breakdown of exactly which areas it's been spent on quickly, but if council gives us direction, we can do that report without a ton of work.
Okay, based on where it's at with the other communities, I'd be happy to just suggest and leave it as at receipt. And then if there's more information that I feel like we really need to take on an advocacy role at a future date, I can bring that back, but I don't want to put that onto staff at this time. So any action requested on that, or we will just vote on receipt? We may have already voted on receipt, but we'll do it again. All those in favor of receipt? Okay, so for now, we're just receiving that letter. Next, we have a letter from Linda Thomas, Philburg Heritage Lodge and Park Association Executive Director. They are requesting that the Philburg public washrooms be added to the town cleaning schedule. That's on page 206. If I can get a motion to receive.
Second.
Seconder. Any questions or comments? We have Councillor Swift.
Thank you. I was behind getting the Philburg to request this because the agreement that the Philburg Society has with the town has been historic and has just rolled over year after year for many, many years now. And I've always thought that it was odd that they took on the cleaning of the washrooms. And recently they've been without a caretaker, and they've hired professional people to come in the evening, but from time to time, some of their board members have had to clean the washrooms, and some of their volunteers have had to take it on for various reasons. And I'm thinking, these washrooms are part of the town's facilities, and it seems to be more appropriate that the town take it on as a project. And I'm sure that the society itself would be happy to work with the town facility manager and work out what makes the most sense. But I think as a going forward, it is a town facility, and the public would expect that those washrooms would be maintained at the same standard that our Marina Park ones are and the rest of the washrooms in the town. The uptake in the park and the use of the park has increased incredibly through COVID and beyond. There's drumming groups and yoga groups and Zumba groups and the hands-on farm and weddings and the restaurant, and it's getting fantastic use and people love it. I just want to make sure at this stage of our time that those washrooms are getting the attention that they need when they need it. So I don't know if anybody else has any comments, but I would like to make a motion that the Philbrick washrooms be taken on as a town responsibility for cleaning.
Thanks for those additional comments. It's good to hear, and all the different community events. But I would like to just quickly ask CAO Wall what the implications on that would look like, or how much that would or wouldn't be. I don't know what our cleaning arrangements are with other facilities.
Yeah, so the only facility in the town of Comox that is cleaned and maintained by our own staff is the community center. Facilities outside the community center are maintained through contract. I suspect it'll be somewhere around the $10,000 mark to take on year-round cleaning of the facilities over there. And maybe just one more thing, the Councillor Swift made a motion, but it wasn't seconded. So to put it on the floor, you'll need a seconder.
Thanks for that comments. It's good just to know roughly what the cost would be and know that it could take time as well, but
Yeah.
probably possible. Do you want to just quickly reread the motion? We'll get a seconder and then any
Sorry,
questions
I
after.
didn't write it down, but the motion would be, also, before I do that though, I would say they have hired a new caretaker that will be coming on in the middle of August. A couple that have not just moved here, they've been here for 3 years, but from the Ukraine. So interesting, if anybody has a queen size bed they don't need, they're looking for one. But my motion would be that the washrooms in the Philbrick Park be maintained by the town staff.
Did we vote on receipt, or we already got a motion on the table?
We don't have a motion on the table. We voted on receipt, but not have a motion from my memory. So now the motion's on the table. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thanks for seconding. So further questions or comments? Councillor Haslett.
I'd be interested to know, because obviously there is a very busy portion of the season where the Philbrick's being used, and a portion of the year where it's a little bit less. So I'd be interested to know what the cleaning schedule would look like in the time where the park is being used less, and what that could do to an annual cost.
And is that something you would want to report from staff on, just to understand? Or
Yes.
from the Philbrick?
Staff or the Philbrick, I'm not bothered on who
Aware.
provides the report.
Okay. Councillor Mayer and then Councillor Kerr, please.
I'm just wondering if it might make more sense just to request staff to work with the Philbrick on a solution, especially given that most of our facilities are taken care of by a contract. And so maybe just an amendment to the motion. I can't remember how the process goes, but it wouldn't necessarily be town staff. It may be through contract. So it might be better just to direct them to work together to find a solution using existing systems that the town already uses for other facilities or something like that. Maybe it's more of a question to staff if that's required or whether it's implied in the current wording of the motion.
CIO Wall would like to speak to that, so that's
Yeah,
perfect.
thanks. With the motion that's on the table right now, I would take that as we would extend what we'd likely do is just take the contractor that we have right now and have them cleaning the facilities. And to Councillor Hazlett's point, there may be cost savings that can be reached by only having this handled by the town for 6 months out of the year and then it handled by the caretaker over the lower periods. But perhaps when speaking with the contractor and Philberg, that's not going to add a lot of price anyway because it's not going to need that much of a frequency of cleaning. So we can certainly have those discussions. The motion on the floor that you have right now would be for us to execute that. You can also change your motion to have us bring back, like to have those discussions and bring back an accurate cost of what it's going to be. I think, I don't know we're going to see too much of a range of change from what I've said right now. 7 to 11,000 probably seems to be a reasonable rate for a year round of cleaning.
Okay, so we'd have to amend the motion if there was any change of the frequency. Councillor Kerr?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Philberg Park and Lodge is an amazing part of our town, and I would support this in principle. I think it's the devil's in the details. As I think about some of the nuances, there's obviously some big events like Philberg Festival. Probably we wouldn't be able to support all of the washroom cleaning during the festival, so we might want to exclude that. There might also be, let's say there's a big increase in the number of weddings. Let's say there's 20 this year and 50 the following year. Big events that draw a lot of people. You might want to clean the washrooms every hour, every half hour during high volume peak. So would that be part of the revenue from the wedding goes to the contract? There might have to be some kind of like a blended model in terms of funds based on the revenue generated by from events. And then, so I just think, it'd be neat to just kind of like pick through this and analyze how it would go. But I think in general, I support this. I also think the idea of in the slower season, maybe the caretaker would be able to provide it. So open to all solutions, but in general, I support the motion. I think we might just want to change the wording a bit. I don't know, Councillor Swift, if you have an idea of how you'd like to change it.
It would have been handy if I'd written it down, wouldn't it? Well, I'm sure the Philberg Society would be really happy to work with the town staff and figure out a solution that works for them and the town. My concern is that we just keep those facilities up to the standard that they should be at. And I'm not suggesting that they haven't been, but I don't think it's reasonable to ask volunteers to be cleaning washrooms. And I just learned today over in the Driftwood Mall, if you want to use the public washroom, you now need to get a security code to get into the public washroom there. So there's things happening in washrooms these days that have never happened before. And I don't think that volunteers and boards should be put at risk. So where are we at with the motion then?
Those are some good additions. CIO Wall will speak to it, but it sounds like there's some solution we can have here.
Yeah, thank you. I think council's raised some really good points and items that need to be worked out. I think you've got two paths in front of you. I think with the motion that's on the table right now, we would work with the group to figure out those items. I don't think that council needs to get too far into giving specific details on exactly what's going to happen. We can go and see if we can work something out. If council is generally in agreement that you would like us to take on, the routine maintenance of the washrooms, we can start to have those conversations with Philberg. If you're comfortable with us entering into that agreement, we can do it now. Otherwise, you can amend the motion to have us have those conversations, bring back what it looks like, and then we can enter into the agreement.
Councillor Swift, since it's your motion, if you want to pick
Well,
one
I
of
would
those
prefer
routes.
that we enter into the agreement now and the staff can work out the details.
The details, including frequency and
Yeah,
those.
the
Okay.
details, because I know, I know this whole thing came up when we were talking about the menstrual products and who was going to resupply and stock. And, now with the caretaker on board, those kinds of responsibilities could be taken on by them. I'm just wanting to make sure everybody's safe and it's being done properly on a regular basis. And because it's a town facility, I think it's appropriate that the town have primary responsibility of it.
Okay. Councillor Grant, and then we can
I'm just
reread what
wondering
the motion
what the
intent
motion
is.
is and what we're actually voting on now, because we've had some changes. So are we changing it or are we just going with what it said?
It sounds like we're going with what it says, but under staff direction, that would include the flexibility to go with a solution that might be part-time caretaker, part-time non, but we're not getting into the details. If we approve the motion as it is, it'd be up to staff to execute and get back to us after, versus the second route would be provide us a report that we would be approving with more detail. CAO Wall, your light's on.
No, you said it exactly correctly. I think that maybe I'll just say I think that staff is fine with the direction. We understand that, you're not giving us direction to run down with a team of 10 people every time Philbert picks up the phone, right? But at the same time, you're not giving us direction to not go down when they have something that's needed. I'm sure that we can go have those discussions, and if something is unreasonable or we can't come to an agreement, we can bring it back to council. I just think we're talking about probably plus or minus $2,000 on your budget. I'm just not sure it's worth your time to bring back a whole bunch of times when we can probably figure it out with the general direction.
Okay, so the motion is directing staff to work with the Philburg Festival on a washroom cleaning schedule, basically with the contract that we have, in no detail of how often or budget.
Just one small change. The direction is that we
Someone
take
rewrite
it on. It's more active that we
Internal.
go and do this. And if I work with Philburg and it turns out I can't come to some sort of agreement that I feel is reasonable, I would then bring that back to council. Say, I know you gave me this direction. We couldn't come to an agreement. Here's where the disagreement is. Can you, council, where would you like us to go? I don't expect that to be the case, though.
Does that work for you, Councillor Swift?
Yeah, and just to be clear, it's not the festival, it's the Philburg Lawn.
Sorry if I
Park.
said Philburg Fest. Yeah. Okay, crystal clear. Shelley's got it. Okay, so we'll vote on the motion if there's no further comments. All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to correspondence C, we have Myrna Logan on page 207 from the Métis Association requesting for flag raising during Métis Week and Louis Riel Day, which is November 13th to 17th, I believe. If I can get a motion to receive. A seconder. Any comments or questions on that? Councillor Mayer?
It's just a process question again. Do we need to actually make a motion for it, or if it's in this, we do need to make a motion, then I would like to make the motion to, let's see if there's wording in here, to support Métis Week with flag raising.
Page 207. Yeah. Yeah, we can vote on receipt. There was a seconder. Sorry, I'm going to go back.
Well, we could actually just, because I made the motion, I could just change the motion to say that we receive this and grant the request.
Perfect. And we have a seconder. I believe it's the first year they're requesting, but sounds great. All those in favor of granting the receipt November 13th to 17th? Perfect. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on, we have a letter on page 209 from Pat Sloan on August 4th requesting for laurel spurge, which is Daphne spreading from the golf course, to be removed. If I can get a motion to receive.
Move receive.
And a seconder. Perfect. Questions or comments? I will say that staff and I had a discussion on this week, talking to Parks, and anything on the Comox golf course is managed by the superintendent and the landscaping crew at the golf course. So they've had a discussion directly with the golf course first. But I will just pass it over if staff has any further things to add. But it's basically at the responsibility of the golf course. And
That's correct. The golf course maintains the golf course grounds. They've been made aware of the issue and they're looking into it. I don't have any specific action plans that they may take, but they are aware of the complaint and they're taking a look at it.
perfect. And I will bring the rest of the findings offline for that. So we have no late items. Reports from council. Scores. My apologies. Councillor Mayor, questions.
That's okay. And it's a question for staff actually about what is our policy about invasives?
So maybe I'll turn this over to Director Ashfield to talk about how we manage invasive plants within the town. It is something that our superintendent of parks has brought to council as an item that we are looking to get a better understanding of how many resources council would like to dedicate to it, because we know we have more invasive plants in the town than we currently have resources allocated to remove them. But I'll turn it over to Director Ashfield.
Yeah, thank you. I had a discussion with our Parks Manager about this, and Parks Department works really closely with the Invasive Species Council of BC to ensure that we have a plan to eradicate any type of invasive species that's within the town. And we also have it in our nuisance bylaw of any noxious material that would be in the town of Comox. So we also work with the BC Weed Control Act on that to find out if it's listed in that category or not, and if it is, and then we pursue it. But if it's not, in this case, we did look it up quickly, and the laurel spurge is not considered noxious. It's considered more of a controlled management at this point, so to control it so it doesn't spread further. So our Parks Department, yeah, works really closely with the BC Council of BC. Invasive Species Council of BC.
Thank you for that, Shelley, and for that question. Sorry to pass that over. We have no late items, reports from member of council. Just go around the table. And again, we're going to add in anything that is kind of new knowledge, but not necessarily the different events we attended. I'll start with Councillor Blacklock.
Well, aside from nautical days, I've recently attended the information session on the new Courtney peer assisted care teams that the province is going to be investing $10 million for the peer assisted teams starting this fall. So I learned a little bit about what that might entail. And then I've also attended the Comox Valley Substance Use Strategy Collaboration meeting, where we talked about how the same PAC teams may implement or may affect some of the anti-substance use substance use policies of that coalition. So more coming from that stuff.
Great, thank you. Councillor Swift.
Thank you. I attended the Philburg board meeting, which was prior to the week of the festival, and of course they were getting geared up for that. So it was an exciting meeting, but that's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Haslett.
Councillor Kerr and myself met with Minister Popham with respects to the application process and grants for events such as Nautical Days and the Philburg Festival. She had some really good information for us as to what they're looking for, especially on the way out, and any information we can get from either our tourism side or the recycling or the bike lockups or anything we can do to kind of increase our application, appetite, so that we're able to apply for more money in the future.
Thank you. Go to Councillor Kerr and then Councillor Grant.
Great, thanks. And just on the Nautical Days theme, again, 65th anniversary of the Nautical Days Festival. Just want to thank all the volunteers, specifically, dozens and dozens of volunteers made the event happen. Specifically, our producer, Dave Stevenson, and his team, and the volunteer coordinator, Steve Ray, did an amazing job all weekend. I want to thank town staff, particularly our amazing Parks Department, for keeping the marina and all of our places in town looking so great, and the Roads Department for the closures for the parade and the 4 miler race. Really interesting hearing Minister Popham talking about how impressed she was with the festival that we can put on as such a smaller community, as we are a smaller community, and the local events we have, the local acts and artists. So it's great to kind of hear her thoughts on that. So again, congrats to everyone involved, especially our town staff.
Thank you for that, Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Other than Nautical Days and Philburg and stuff, I attended an in-camera RD meeting today, which we will probably be able to give you some information on sometime in the future, but for now it's top secret, so that's it.
Thanks. I enjoyed that meeting with Mr. Popham as well. Learned a lot about the way she's thinking about supporting events, the way the province is thinking about that potentially as a longer term kind of initiative rather than just a one-off. I also attended the drought conditions and response call that the province hosted for the Solom watershed. And I know the Solom is not our watershed for the town, but the relevance is that I eat some of the food that is grown by those farmers, and I'm on the Food Policy Council, and I feel like I have a lot to learn yet about the drought conditions in the Solom. I did read the reports that are on the CBRD website. That watershed has been studied, and there's lots of really good recommendations actually in the second report in particular. So I bring it up just as an awareness piece. I think the drought kind of flood wildfire connection is becoming stronger and more relevant to all of us. So I'll continue to share that information as I learn. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. Jordan, CEO Wall, and I had a meeting with Harbour Air. The CEO and business planning manager came in to the harbour just to discuss, in a perfect world, they would like to have operations all year round, but there's quite a few logistical challenges that would have to be sorted out. But it was an interesting meeting just to show what could be done for economic development and tourism down in the area, and also for residents who may be flying in or out to Vancouver. Today we got announced kind of officially in the news release as the first bat-friendly community in Vancouver Island. So we kind of beat Cumberland and Courtenay to it, but I think they're all working on it also. But that was from our past first on the island, which is very exciting. So that was good news. Tim Enns was here to celebrate that with us, and you'll see that out in the news. Just a couple future events. We'll be doing our Pride raising of the flag on Friday, August 25th. The time and details are still coming. And then the Pride Society is doing their first Pride Parade on the Saturday, August 26th. So we were welcome to attend that if we chose. And that's it from my end. So I don't believe we have any media questions. We will be moving to go in camera, but are there any questions from the public? Yes, Stephen, do you mind actually going to the mic if possible?
Do I have to?
Yeah. By nice request with the mic on.
Where's the button? That's a gray one on the bottom. You got it. There you go. Wow. You're on.
Thank you.
So, hi. I'm Stephen Farraher. I live on Glacier View, and I'm very interested in the discussion you had earlier about the speeds. We've been there 8 years, and Glacier View, which goes in the back road heading towards our sister city, well, in the city nearest. It's become a little bit more of a, not Indy 500, but we get evidences of such, especially this time of the year. And I'm somewhat caught between once in a while, because I'm an occasionally emotional person, whether I should run at a vehicle or a motorcycle that's going way too fast and too loud, or I'm thinking that doesn't sound very smart. So I'm trying to adopt more of a kind of a waving and a friendly, but I don't know if that makes any difference at all. So a couple of years ago, I had the police come out and they camped on the road adjacent to our house for a while, and they said that they would get back to me regarding the results of what they found, and well, they didn't do that. So my question is, regarding administratively, are there things that can be recommended from the town that I could do in terms of this kind of concern, or is this something that is purely something to deal with the police and that kind of stuff? Or I should already know the answer to this, but I really don't. So I thought, well, I might as well ask it.
We may throw this one at staff, but I also know like ICBC used to have like signage you could pick up, and they may also have tips, but there's
Oh,
different
we do have a
avenues.
traffic calming. That's
Yeah.
on our street. It was
Slow
wrecked.
down
It was
children.
wrecked a couple of years ago by somebody who took off, and then they eventually refixed. But that hasn't seemed to make much of a difference. So
ICBC sometimes may have new things. CAO Wall.
Yeah, I think what we would do what we do when we have complaints about excessive speeding in an area is we take our speed tubes out to see what's actually happening and to see if what you're seeing matches what we see in the data. And if we do find that speeds are excessive beyond what we find acceptable in our traffic calming policy, then we start to take a look at what the options would be to reduce it. It could be speed boards, it could be delineators, it could be a number of different options. But the first thing that we do is find out, is there actually a statistical problem in the area?
One other issue I forgot to mention. So with the sewage deal coming up, I don't know exactly when it's going to happen, it occurred to me that my street is going to be one of the ancillary streets where people will go. Although I think there was some talk about it being blocked, but I don't know, that's not something I think we usually like to do here. So so I thought, well, gee, this issue is maybe going to get a lot worse before it gets better. So that's partly why I'm raising it as well, so.
Comments taken, and yeah, it's hard to know if it busier could mean slower cars also, but still busier, so point taken. Thank you very much. Okay, so yes, of course, come on up, and if you don't mind, just for those, we do video of the meeting, so we just ask that you have the light on so that people watching online can hear.
Mayor, councilors, but do I have to go there?
Yeah, you can stand here.
Just a little bit closer, just for those. Thank you.
Oh, look at that.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Good day, everyone. Testing 1, 2, 3. I guess I hear myself. You hear me, right? This is my first time here on this. So I have two concerns. Well, besides living in an apartment in Anderton Noise Park, okay? That's one concern. Number two is composting. And this lady beside me over here, Denise, she lives in, okay, so you got Comox Avenue, Stewart. So she's off Stewart, Heron Court, is it? Heron Court, and I'm just the building beside her, Sandpiper North. So my fence, where I am at the 3rd floor, behind the fence, is just, okay, let's start over. So you got the tennis courts, right? I'm behind the tennis courts. So let's say you're on, what's that road? Anderton Park. No. Stewart.
Stewart or Alder?
You got Stewart and? Balmoral. Oui. So you got Balmoral. Okay, so when I'm on Balmoral, you're facing the courts, the tennis courts. I'm behind there, okay? So you got Heron Court, and you got me, and then you got Berwick Building, okay? Now, I've been there for years, and it's getting worse and worse, and especially this year with the young people, okay? They're, I call the RCMPs, I call Bob Morrow with the law officer, okay? So the RCMPs, okay, it's in the evening, the young generation that makes noise with their ghetto blaster. First of all, that should be forbidden. You guys should have a sign there, somewhere at the park, maybe a camera, behind or where's that little, there's a cabin there besides the tennis courts. The little cabin there? I don't know what you call it. When you have tennis court.
The tennis club, yeah.
Club, yes. So it's no fun for me living there. You don't have no privacy on your balcony to have dinner, okay? I hear them from the kitchen. I hear them from the living room. It's annoying. There's no privacy in the summertime when they're there on and off making noise. Especially, okay, thank God there's the Philbrook Festival and Nautical Days. Anna's there. She loves the music, dancing, whatever. But, of course, they're over there, so I don't have to be bothered by the young generation. There's at least, I didn't take a picture of them. I didn't want to be so much of a close-up. Hello. And, but it's very annoying. I think if you had a rule, okay, so there's a fence, it's not much, you can't really put a sign there, they'll tear it off. But maybe put a sign behind the tennis courts above, especially having a bylaw officer going more often. Okay, bylaw officers finish between 3:30 and 4. Okay, it's passive phone call, they're waiting for a phone call to do something, but they're not there after 4:30. And the RCMPs, they won't go there if it's not threatening. Is that called threatening when I'm on my patio? They say, fuck you. Is that threatening? I don't know. And then they go and they laugh and they make noise to make things worse each time you see you in and out. That is no fun, okay? And so I wish something would be done with that. Maybe have a bylaw officer that's there more often, like every hour, and being in the proactive mode. Proactive meaning, for me, means, okay, you don't need to wait for a phone call during business hours or after business hours. If there's no threatening that the RCMPs don't have to be there, but they can go roll around and see what's going on. It's not okay to have loud music. Okay, you guys probably have all your nice little houses and quiet, but where I live, I didn't win the lottery ticket yet, so I still have to be stuck there. And it's in summertime, miss, when everybody is out of school most of the time. Sometimes it's in the evening, all year round, but it doesn't last long. So it's a different group. And this lady, she can say too, it's the other side of the fence, and she hears them too. And just coming back to composting, if I may.
Yeah, just briefly, and we do appreciate your comments, and we'll take
Yes.
note. Many of us do actually live in the
Sorry.
neighborhoods around there, so we.
Because I live in an apartment, there's even with the Devon properties, it won't work for composting. I'm not in a strata, I'm in an apartment, but I sure love to see those cute little green buckets. Today in the city here, you can see all of them outside. It's Wednesday today, and it's composting, pickup, and it's recyclage, recycling, and all that. But it'd be nice to have one bucket outside our building. I called Mterra too. This lady Janice couldn't refer me any further. They don't know what to do. So the town of Comox has to work with Mterra, and Mterra has to work with the landlord people who are in charge. But I'm not getting nowhere doing anything of that, and it'd be nice to have your own compost, like scrap vegetables and fruit, because I have a lot of that, and I used to have my own compost, but they made me take it away. It's a long story, but we don't want to get there. And just coming really quick to the Philburg Park, real quick. Okay, you need people to clean up the washrooms. Just ask whoever's going to talk to the Philburg people, just like they have in Costco in the washroom, they have a big garbage can without the top. It's easier to just dump your hand towels instead of getting a cleaner they're picking up the towels that people have to push through this little container on the plastic. You don't have to go there every hour or every half hour. It could be done every 2-3 hours. And people who pay to go to the Philburg Park Festival, they have to pay to go in there. So they're more clean people than drunk and stoned people. So the toilets won't be that bad. Or you can lift, just squat, whatever.
Thank you very
Thank
much. We'll
you.
make note of those noise, and we are kind of working slowly through what solutions can be for strata composting, but there's no easy solution. So thank you for those comments, and we do live in the neighborhoods around there, and so yeah. Okay, so I'll get a motion to go in camera. All those in favor? Okay, so we're going to be taking a break and then going in camera. Thank you to everyone who attended tonight's meeting, and enjoy your evening.
Just